looks like folks are in the room. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Hurrier, and I head up the Textile Arts curriculum in the School of Art and Design at Portland State University. For those of you joining us from outside the university, the Textile Arts curriculum is an elective track in the BFA Art Practice program that provides an interdisciplinary approach to the study of clothing and textiles. We offer courses in weaving, surface design, sewn construction, and dress history that encourage students to develop portfolios for a variety of applications in costume, apparel, textiles, and contemporary art. This is one of 4 public events that we're hosting this term where we bring in outside perspectives to supplement our current course offerings. We hope you can join us again for our final event on May 12th at 12 p.m. where we will be joined by Max Adrian, a soft sculpture artist. I will be sharing a link in this chat for any students or guests who are interested in learning about these programs, either the events that we have that are coming up or want to access our event archive. This will all be in the chat here in a second. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are joining you all from Portland State University, which is located near the heart of downtown Portland, Oregon, and Multnomah County. We honor the Indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on: the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, Watlala bands of Chinook, and Tualatin Kalapuya, and many other Indigenous nations of the Columbia River. It is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and to recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants. We are so thrilled today to welcome Rhonda P. Hill. Rhonda is an accomplished business leader in the fashion and entertainment industries. She has been recognized and awarded for her leadership in fashion merchandising, holding executive positions at Warner Brothers Studio Stores, Adidas, Levi Strauss & Company, and is a vice president for Disney Direct Marketing in the Disney Consumer Products Division of the Walt Disney Company. Rhonda currently contributes to the fashion industry as a fashion curator, advisor, sustainable fashion advocate, editor, and magazine publisher. She is the founder of E.D.G.E, an international platform advancing the field of fashion and artistic values, cultural significance, and sustainability through the exposure of emerging designers. Today, we're going to be touring this innovative resource that Rhonda's put together and discussing some of her recent publications. Rhonda, thank you so much for joining us today. We are just so thrilled to have you.
I'm very happy to be here.
Great. So we're just going to start. So I've got the website. Can you all see the website? Okay, great. So I've got that pulled up. And for those of you joining us today, this format's going to be a little less formal than maybe some of our other talks. We really want this to be more of a dialogue, and we welcome your comments and questions in the chat as we go. If you would like to participate verbally, just please raise your hand, use the raise hand function, or just type your name in the chat, and we will call on you to unmute yourself as we go. So with that, I wanted to start today just with Rhonda. Can you just tell us a little bit more about E.D.G.E? What is E.D.G.E, and what were some of the motivations, your motivations for starting it?
Hi, thank you. Hello, everybody. Well, let me start with when I started in the fashion industry, and I've been in the industry for decades now. I was a buyer for Macy's. And when I bought from Macy's, I bought what was called contemporary juniors or better juniors. And as a buyer, you were responsible for the bottom line. So it was common for you to buy established brands that would, quote unquote, pay the bills. But I also saw that there was an opportunity for up and coming and emerging designers, unlike some of the other buyers. So I would take the risk and I would allocate open to buy dollars in order to showcase their work. And it worked because their stuff would sell out. And so what I realized over the decades that, being in an industry, and now I'm not really in the industry in that corporate function, but what I've been seeing is there's such an excessiveness of clothing out there in fashion. There's a lack of innovation, a lack of imagination, low quality, and it's just more and more and more. And what I wasn't seeing, or what I'm not seeing, are emerging designers. So I founded this platform to shed light on that, to basically expose the design excellence of not only emerging and independent designers, but those that are also established that are under the radar. So that's kind of the core and the premise of it. But the other part of it is the more intelligent piece of it. You know, when you think of fashion today, or at least fashion has a reputation of being very fluff and frivolous. And particularly in America, we look at fashion when it comes to the celebrities, and what's on the runway, or what are the Kardashians wearing. But I felt like I wanted this platform to take an intelligent look at fashion. So we have pulled together uh, data, narratives, interviews, obviously, of the emerging designers, and ideas on a path forward, a better future for the industry. Because right now, I feel like it's just in a glut. And so, when you take this intelligent approach, it has more of an underlying content on identity, a closer connection to anthropology, than the whole frivolous reputation. And when we do this, we focus specifically on principles of artistic value, cultural significance, and sustainable practices. So when I curate the designers that meet this, that are within the E.D.G.E network, they have to meet at least one of these, but it's better if they meet at least three of these criteria. So that's pretty much the premise of E.D.G.E.
Great. I just want to make sure, let's see, one second. It looks like we maybe are having a technical issue that I'm just gonna try to work out. Annan, are you able to see Rhonda now? Cool. I'm not sure. I hope that folks can see Rhonda on the screen. So if folks can maybe just direct message me or let me know, that would be helpful. So, oh, okay. So yeah, I cannot see. I wonder what the deal is with that. I'm sorry, everyone. We haven't had this problem for anyone. Okay.
Now Rhonda's on.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Great. Well, thank you so much for this like amazing introduction to the website. It just feels so. I'm actually wondering if you could maybe just like, what do those terms mean for, like, in terms of defining each of those like criteria that you sort of look for? What do those mean for you? And yeah, and how does that play out with some of the designers?
Good question. Okay, so the three criteria are artistic value, cultural significance, and sustainable practices. Artistic value is looking at a garment that has in-depth composition. The designer has paid a lot of attention to the materials that go in, to the construction. I call it make. They have make in the garment. So it's not just something that has two seams on the side and seams at the shoulder, and then that's it, and that's what's out there. But there's something of interest, like, for example, what I have on, this is a secondhand item, but when you look at the sleeve, there's interest here, so artistic value. Cultural significance is leveraging your, let's see, cultural significance is not only leveraging what's happening in pop culture, let's say, but leveraging an historical perspective, whether it's storytelling, whether it's a heritage based on your own ethnicity, so culture is what surrounds us all. That is the arts. And sustainable practice is, it may sound obvious, but it's not so obvious, because the industry has really not gotten on board when it comes to sustainable. I mean, it's like little bit by little bit, but sustainable is beyond just using materials that are biodegradable. Sustainable is basically thinking of limited resources, which we have, and working within an ecosystem that keeps those resources in the circle. So in a circular, what we call circular fashion, but in alignment with circular um, ecosystem. So that's those are the three things that I look at. What's interesting, Allison, is that a lot of the designers, especially the ones coming out of school now, they really, really, really are just so into the sustainable piece. That wasn't the case when I first started out. When I first started out, hardly anybody was really thinking about that. But now they're kind of chomping at the bit. So
I
yeah.
would say that that reflects probably the interests of our students as well, for sure. So.
Okay, good. I'm so glad.
Great. Well, I was wondering, I mean, I think one thing I'm really interested in, particularly for students, is how this website, you've got so many great sort of pages that are on it that sort of address certain topics. Could you just maybe give us a tour and sort of tell us, like, if we were going to use this sort of as a resource, particularly for students, how might they go about doing that?
No problem. Well, what I'm going to do is I'll just highlight the categories. So Edge is divided up into categories. So if there's a topic like sustainable practices, you would click on Sustainable Edge. That category will give you everything that is regarding sustainable designers that we've talked to, related content, statistics, whatever. Underneath, if you hover over Sustainable Edge, the menu, you'll see three other there, and that's all you have to do. You'll see three other very important pieces that will kind of get you grounded. So, for example, no exit, no way out, close the loop on fashion will just give you the foundation of what a circular fashion system means. It's a really good cheat sheet. So I would suggest that. Yeah, there we go. And so it will take you through the comparison of what's today's system, which is a linear approach where we just use the resources and don't really care, where versus a circular system where we reuse the resources. We protect, we preserve the environment. So that's, and then it also goes down and gives you steps to be within that circular system. So that's a really good piece. The other piece within that sustainable menu tab, when you hover over that, fashion industry waste statistics. Yeah, this is the number one read article on Edge. I mean, people from all over the world, they reference it, they read it. It's a very sought after um, data, basically. And what we've done here is we've searched the entire website and have combined as many stats that are relevant to sustainable fashion, waste, secondhand, reusing materials, da 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 da. And then it's all cited at the bottom. And we continue to update this ongoingly. So this is a really, really good piece for statistics. And then the third one, I want to say, when you hover over Sustainable Edge again, the third one is on this is on materials. Another really good one to just get kind of a basis. And this is something that most people don't know, which is non-biodegradable textiles take 20 to 200 years to biodegrade. So it takes you through the biodegradable textiles, which includes those that are man-made. So that's another good piece. So that's Sustainable Edge. The other tabs that I will highlight, About Edge will be pretty obvious and clear. Within, if you hover over About Edge, Allison, About Edge will be obvious. The second one is Edge Fashion Intelligence, the 4 E's. That kind of goes a little deeper than the About. So it talks about fashion intelligence. Um, it talks about how we connect with, we used I call it the 4 E's. It's really connecting this network, this platform through exhibition, through editorial, through exposure, obviously, and education. So that will kind of take you through there. And it also kind of gives a bit of, it kind of describes everything, and it gives a bit of accomplishments as to what the platform has done. Another one that I'll highlight is Edge Radar is where you will find all designer interviews. So if you just want to understand what designers are doing, um, how they're approaching storytelling, how they're approaching their practice. This is a really this you could just live in this category. There's quite a few designers here. And what's interesting is that, I was reading back over some of the ones that were done some years ago, Allison, and the information that they project, that they talk about, is timeless. So I wouldn't, to the viewers, don't look at dates like, oh, this was, this interview, Rhonda did this interview 3 years ago. Really, when you read it, it's very timeless information, and I hope very helpful. So there's that piece. Edge Remembers is a category that talks about the untold stories. There's a lot of history in fashion that we just are not aware of, and that is not really talked about in the traditional fashion history. So what Edge has done is we've captured these stories that you don't normally hear about. So this is a pretty powerful um, category. We just started this about a year ago. We just started this about 9 months ago. So this is a pretty interesting piece here as well. And then education is another one that's here again. If you want, some of the content will overlap within the categories, and that's fine. It just depends on how you want to go into the site. But education will provide best practices, advice, reports, industry reports, facts, resources, that kind of thing. So that kind of gives you kind of a big picture of it, how it is by category. Now, let's say you want you can always go into the search bar and search, whatever you want to search. Emerging designers, you may put in there, whatever you want to put in there, or you may know of a designer's name. You can always do that, and it will pull up, everything you need from that hashtag. um, Now, on the right is a sidebar that has more information. Here again, when you click on the images, it will take you to those articles. What we do with Edge is we rotate, because the information on the site is timeless. We just rotate information, and we pull information from years ago because it's still relevant, vice versa. Or we may, like this month, we pretty much packaged things that were regarding Earth. We wanted to celebrate Earth Month, so we did a lot of sustainable stuff. But in getting ready for today's talk, I just went in and kind of redid everything just so that you kind of get a feel for it. Now, also in the sidebar, Allison, if we scroll down further, and I really want to point this out because the other piece about this is we've also started to add quotations from the designers that we interview, so that you can kind of see some of the things that they say within their text. If you just don't want to click on the image, you at least we pull out kind of what's kind of the most important thing. Now, when we get further down, there it is. Okay. This is a very valuable piece, I think. And what we've done is we've gone through the website, through the online, information, and curated this particular one, which is on sustainable fashion. I think it's like over 30 links. And these links literally will take you to um, online platforms that we believe are accredited, that provide very good information for anything to do with sustainable fashion. There's that piece. And if we scroll further down, if you really are into fashion history and you're looking for, keep going down. And if you're looking for and here it is, fashion study. If you're looking for fashion history that is not in the typical books, if you're looking for something beyond Christian Dior and Chanel, we started to add links here as well on resources that are credible, that have done the work, and it's quite interesting and quite powerful. So that kind of gives you a bit of the website. At the very bottom of the website, which I don't know if anyone ever gets there, On your left is what's called fashion news. And I want to point this out because, and you don't have to click on it or anything. I have the RSS feed from a platform, online platform called fashionunited.com. And I vet fashionunited.com. They're based out of the UK, and they provide current events on fashion. And what I like about it, I feel like it's like the Associated Press of the fashion industry, in that it's not, there's no spin, there's no bias, there's no preference of their content. And the reason I say that is because there's another site that a lot of people go to, and that's called the businessaffashion.com. I think it's called businessaffashion.com. And they started out kind of doing this, especially on independence as well. I don't feel that they do that. I feel that they focus mostly on the higher end world of fashion. So, it's you'll hear about the Chanel's and the name branded fashion, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like this one captures everything that's going on. So anyway, it's just if you're on the website and you're having fun reading everything, but yet you want to kind of get a little bit of current events, feel this has like the top I think 8 or whatever, and you can just click on any of those and it'll take you to Fashion United, or you can just go to Fashion United on your own. But I like that online site. So that's the website. That's how to navigate it.
I love it. It is such an amazing resource. Actually, Gabby in the chat said this is incredible. So
Okay.
yeah, I think especially just I think thinking about like different perspectives on like fashion influencers and fashion history. We aren't going to get to it a ton today, but if everybody should be checking out the study of 8 that Rhonda did earlier this
Oh,
year. It's
yeah.
it's incredible. And then this amazing resource that you've put together for helping people kind of understand where they can get additional information around sustainable resources is great as well, for sure. So
Good.
I know that like students will be flocking to that. So uh, cool. Well, I think what I wanted to do next is so I would love to just kind of talk a little bit more about like one of the things I really like, and especially in thinking about this for an educational setting, is that you feature a lot of emerging design perspectives or like early career designers. And so I'm curious, you did talk a little bit about like that lens of how you sort of decide who to feature on the website. But how does that process work? Do you like reach out to the designers? Do they contact you? And then as you're doing that, I'm just going to go head over to the Edge Radar section so we can eventually talk about
Okay,
a
great.
couple of
Okay,
them.
good. Yeah, okay. Very good question. It's very organic in a way on how I get these designers. I do several things. I like to find those that have not been quite tainted from the mandates of the industry, the the commercial aspect of it. And I'm for commercialism, I'm for capitalism, but there's ways you can still be in that space and still fit those criteria of artistic value, cultural significance, and sustainability. So I look for those who have not yet been um, in the mandate that they've got to create something that is saleable. And so they end up being good candidates. And they usually a lot of them come from, they're getting their MFAs, let's say at the fashion schools, and it's their thesis project, or they're already out there maybe a year or two later, but yet their thesis project is really, really cool and interesting because, they're really thought out of the box. It's like, oh my God, they've constructed such beautiful stuff. Um, I also attended fashion shows where I found designers, but I'm very selective on going to fashion shows. I really don't like going to fashion shows, but I will go if there's a up and coming designer that I feel that I want to talk to or see their work um, up front. International fashion award shows, I comb the online community to find those, and I usually find designers there. Um, and I'm not sure if the audience is familiar with the online platform that's called Not Just a Label. They're a platform that curates. Everybody can pretty much kind of get your profile listed there, let's just say. And I found designers that way, Instagram, and I also have on my website, if you want to submit, if you feel like you meet the criteria, I do have an editorial submission page that's at the bottom of the website. If people, search and they find that and they want to submit, they will. So I get those once in a while, but I usually seek them out. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was thinking I would love to just kind of talk through a couple of folks that you featured recently. Do we want to start maybe with Isabella Diorio?
Sure.
So,
The one good thing about all the designers I that really just touch my heart is that they are storytellers. Um, they they are creating work that's meaningful and purposeful, and they all are part of this chorus that's saying it's all the same out there. There's just there's no imagination. So what I like about Isabella is that she is a storyteller, and that she used fashion to tell a story about women in combat. In particular, a story that's not widely known. I didn't know about this. A story that of those that served under the disguise of men, um, as women when women were not allowed. And the way she did it was to me, it was a work of art, because she did everything. She basically took secondhand pieces and discarded materials and literally deconstructed them and put them back together again. But she honored those women that have served in the military by naming her ensembles by these women. I thought that was just amazing. And then she went further in that she not only is it aesthetically appealing when you look at her collection, but everything has a functionality as if you're in the military. It has, like, if you were a soldier in the military, everything has a functionality right down to the legs, the harnesses. It was just everything was integrated, and I thought that was just such a wonderful a way of reusing and upcycling. She met every piece, the sustainable piece, the cultural significance, a story they wouldn't know about, the artistic value is in her make and how she deconstructed and put it back together. So I know I sound excited when I talk about Isabella, but it was just like, it was amazing. Totally
yeah,
amazing.
no, I feel like it's such an incredible collection, and I also just I appreciate too, just I think, like you were saying, just the identity aspect. It's a totally, I mean, it's not something that
Yes.
certainly something that I haven't really, like, an identity that I hadn't ever sort of connected with in terms of fashion.
Yes.
And so I think it's lovely to have that person who's had that experience and then bringing that experience into like the active clothing and
Yeah, and she's
garment.
amazing. We talk by phone. A lot of times I don't get a chance to talk to them by phone. She's an American. Many of the designers are not American. And that's a whole nother story we can talk about. But
Mhm.
um, she graduated from Kent and Kent State University, and she recently moved to during the pandemic. She moved to New Orleans,
Mhm.
and so she's partnering with someone, and they're going to start to kind of set up shop, if you will, and figure things out. But it was so lovely to talk to her and hear it from her firsthand how she put this together. So
Sure, sure. Another, just to see another couple of folks, I was gonna go over here to, is it Abiola Onabule?
that sounds great.
Okay. Okay.
All good, Allison, because there's a lot of times I'm like thinking, okay, now how do you pronounce their name?
Oh, okay. I just didn't want to get it wrong. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the work from this artist?
Okay, so Abiola, she meets a lot of the criteria through cultural preservation. And what I like about what she's done is how she talks about the relationship of a culture, the relationship that a culture has with cloth. Um, one of the things that she says is, and then let me see if I can quote this. Let me just, I have some notes here because I just don't want to forget this moment, the words that she used. But most of us kind of think of having a relation. Most of us don't really think about having a relationship with fashion. I mean, I never did. But what I liked about my interview with her is that she describes the role of cloth as having its own distinct storytelling, identity, and importance in a person's life. She's fascinated herself by how textile can become the through line of people's lives, their personal histories, economic change and growth, political and cultural shifts. And she described it as, she says that cloth that is created for special occasions, for example, is stored and cared for, to be brought out again and talked about. Can you imagine that? Kind of conjuring up memories of the cloth's original outing. And what I liked about that is that it reminds me of the European culture as well, and particularly in France. Fashion and textiles, and even in the Asian culture, fashion and textiles has a lot more meaning, not only as an art, but it has a lot of meaning the way Abiola is describing it. In contrast to the American culture, where we really didn't have that history. You know, we didn't have the ateliers and the fashion houses. We didn't have that. We really came on the scene as far as fashion, independent from the European fashion, I want to say in the 70s, 80s. So, you know, when we started to develop ready to wear. So anyway, so I just felt like she really meets the test when it comes to preserving her Yoruba, Nigerian heritage in textiles unique to that region of Africa, and then describing the role of cloth. I thought that was pretty amazing. Now is she has a residence program at the Design Museum in the UK, and so I interviewed her. I had to go through the communications team there in order to talk to her. So what you see in the website is, or in my website, is her thesis work went from her MFA thesis collection at Central St. Martin's. So that's what you see there. But she did an indigo dye collection for the Design Museum. So she's done a body of work for them and a wonderful video. And when you click on, I think I updated her piece so that if you click on her, somewhere when you click on it, you will get to what she actually did for the Design Museum. And then and down the road, I think we're going to probably develop another story regarding her indigo dye piece. But yeah.
Oh, I think is it. Oh, I'm not entirely sure where I should click, but
Oh, here, I'll just tell you. Let me get on there.
Sure.
Yeah, let me see if I can, because
oh wait, is it right here?
the video that she did, let's see what you get. That's it.
Cool.
Yeah, very good. That's it. And there's a video, and she talks it, and she shows the dye bath, everything. I mean, it's quite amazing. And yeah, quite amazing. So I recently emailed her and I says, okay, we're going to stay in touch because we may want to do another article on you. And she's really excited about E.D.G.E. She's happy to be part of the E.D.G.E. network. And you never know, and I know we'll probably get to this, but I believe that E.D.G.E. has an exposure that's digital, but I also believe that there should be an in-person exposure of contemporary designers and artists through the institutions, through museums. So I'm glad to see that she's got that, but I think we need to do more of that.
Well, and I think what I love about this, and especially seeing it in with the context of this video, is that it's so much about like highlighting process as well. And I think in general, I feel like that's the big thing about a lot of the designers that you're featuring, is that they're really they're elevating clothing to something beyond a product, but really thinking about it in this kind of context of as an art object, which is really beautiful. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Are there, we probably aren't going to have time to cover
Oh,
every single one on our list. Are there like one or two other folks that you feel like we should hit before we move on?
okay. Let's see. Yeah, let's take a look at, well, if we want to talk something about more like social, yeah, let's talk, how about Teen Use Young?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Because this is another one about process. This is also about body. This one is pretty interesting. Okay, so Teen Use Young, actually, I found him on not just another label, not just a label platform. And I recently, or well, it's not recently anymore, a few years ago, I exhibited his work in a fashion exhibit. This piece touches on social and psychological impact of mass production. And what's interesting is that he he embraces a couple of things here. He embraces the imperfection of mass production. He's Chinese, and he grew up in a town right outside of Shanghai that over the last several decades has really grown as far as manufacturing of apparel, okay, for the world. So anyway, so he wanted to touch on this, and he's a recent graduate of Parsons in New York. And so this is his thesis program. He touches on a couple of things. He embraces the imperfection of mass production in several ways. One is when you look at um, the workers are human beings, and so there's a human factor to it. And they're sewing, they're cutting. They're not. It's not a precision, you know. So they make mistakes with bad stitching, with maybe how something gets cut. So there's no perfection in that. And also as people, we don't have perfect bodies, you know. So for him, he embraced the whole realism that we as a society and these particular workers doing this process, there are some imperfections. And when he went to develop his pattern block, thank you, that's great. When he went to develop his pattern block for his collection, and I don't know if the audience understands this, but when you are creating, let's say a style, let's say a dress, you will develop a what's called a block, and that block will be sized, and that's where you get your size, your fits, your fittings. And so what he did was he took that and um, um, used some technique of shape and textile manipulation to break down the block, because to him that was too perfect, that was too Barbie doll, that was too, you know. And so he did that, and he also manipulated the material, and it looks very shredded because of his, you know, yeah, there's areas of shred imperfection, you know, nothing's perfect, this is not a perfect outfit. The part that I liked the most about what he did was he completed his collection with footwear. And when you look at the footwear, I don't know if there's a close up. Oh yeah, okay. He created this footwear, and what he was describing is that the workers, he gets back to the workers, it's a very mundane um, it's a mundane life experience. They go in every day and they work their 8 to 10 hours, and then they go home. Go in every day, work their 8 to 10 hours, they go home. Probably low pay, whatever. You know, it's just constant. This is what they do, and this is what the daughters do. And then, you know, every family member is coming in through this very mundane. And to him, when he interviews these workers, they're kind of sad about this, but this is their life. But when they leave that day, all the work that they're doing, the stitching and the cutting, all of the remnants and dust from all of that is on their feet when they're walking out the door and clocking out. And so he wanted to describe that, and he did that by creating the shoes like that. So it's pretty amazing. And and I have to tell you, when we were doing the exhibit, there was two of us, and with our gloves on and everything. And that was the hardest part, was making sure that we got the shoes on the mannequin really well without destroying it, because they're so fragile. But it was pretty amazing when you see it up close. Pretty amazing.
Well, any other folks that you want to highlight?
Um, Pavan, we'll just go in order. Pavan Mirzahi. What I liked about her, she got her MFA or maybe it was her bachelor's degree at FITM, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. And I met her there. This is in Los Angeles. I met her there and we spent a couple hours talking. It was quite extraordinary. She, her premise is to create for her, she believes in concept over saleability. And it was like seeing, preaching to the choir. It's like, oh, I love it. So we talked a lot about that. And what she said was that um, fashion schools don't prepare you for, well, okay. She says fashion schools prepare you to be followers and not leaders. And they are designed to prepare you to work in corporate America, to work for a Donna Karen. Um, and she didn't want to, and most of them, they don't want to be a part of that. And it's because you're like a machine. You're told what to do. You lose your creative control. You lose some independence. And so, and she said that it's just this trajectory of you're like a machine. There's a collection every season, and there's 5 seasons now, instead of 4. There's a collection every season, and it's a constant reiteration with no creativity, no space for creativity of the same stuff based on what is sold, not any future vision, but based on what is sold. And so she was really interested. She was really clear about how the schools prepared to do that, and she really didn't want to be a part of that. Um, so I know we're going to run out of time, but I would encourage everyone to read about what she said. I mean, it's pretty amazing. She also has, she studied architecture. And so, although didn't find it personal enough for her as she did with fashion. So she got out of that. But what she learned, it kind of helped her even in designing this collection. She looks at things very differently because she had that architecture background, that architecture design background. But very amazing conversation I had with her. Like I said, I encourage you to read um, what she had to say. But she believes in the creative power disrupts the system. Yes, she believes in disrupting the system. Another, another really quick thing I'll point out is that collection is amazing. They only give you so much money to do your thesis program. So she fortunately had the funds to add to that and create the concept over saleability, to her point, because what her instructors were telling her was that you need to design something to be more saleable and make it more saleable and real, not too artsy, not too out there. So she was up against instructors that were telling her not to be too artsy, not to be too out there, and that's what she executed. So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. And I think that it's like actually it's a perfect way. I mean, most of the way that students are approaching fashion in our program is really is thinking about is coming at it from the perspective of contemporary art. And I think that one of the things I know that I'm interested in for all students is like how do you start to develop yourself as an independent, as an artist with a name who's recognized by your name as opposed to sort of a cog in this fashion system. Because I think that's a lot of like what people don't really realize is when you go to fashion school, they're not necessarily training you to have that kind of independent identity. It's that you're part of this kind of product making
yeah,
system. So
yeah,
and I think it's just so important also when we think about like how we value um, clothing and fashion and how that is different than how we value artwork and whatnot. It's
yes,
just, it really sort of, it plays right into that, right? When we don't
yes,
actually have any kind of relationship with the people who design and who make,
yes,
and we don't, we don't appreciate them and value the work in the same way. And it becomes easy to throw away and unsustainable.
exactly, exactly.
Um, we have actually Gigi just popped a question in the chat. In your talks with these designers, have you come across a school program that doesn't focus so much on the saleability of fashion?
Yes. Non-American schools.
Exactly. That was what I was going to say too.
Yeah. Central St. Martin's, that, Alexander McQueen graduated, so need I say more, graduated from Central St. Martin's, is a very good example. Many of the schools that are not American focus on it as an art. So So the answer is yes. American schools different. It's about that they have to check off the box. You know, these students have paid all this money to come to school, and their parents want them to get a job. So that's the direction. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think where you do see sort of innovation happening, it oftentimes is coming from art programs, but even those have a bit of a hierarchical structure in terms of thinking about fashion as not sort
Yeah.
of art, which is another kind of, I think,
Yeah.
conundrum that you get to on the other side of the end of like thinking about,
Right.
you know, things being conceptual enough to kind of
Right.
be in an art context. So,
You know, the one thing I would say I would add though, Allison, would be FIT in New York um, may be an example of an American school that deviates a little bit from that. And the reason I say that is they have an amazing fashion museum, um, and they have cultivated that over decades, and they've got good programming out of it. The irony of it is that they never exhibit or well, I don't want to say never, but they haven't really exhibited the the designers that they have going to school. I don't know. There's just something, and a lot of them don't do that, and I'm not quite sure if I understand why. But yeah, FIT might be, you know, counter to that. What I just said.
and I actually think that there is sort of, I don't know, this is just my perspective, but I think there's a change that's also kind of happening in the way, because I just remember when I was in school, like the idea of like Alexander McQueen, like I was in the same sort of boat where it's like everything you're doing is too weird, it's too conceptual, it's too like that. It's never gonna like sell. How are they going to make this in a different country and like all of the things, right? And but I think now, you know, platforms like the Met Gala and sort of more innovation happening in sort of runway fashion and the entertainment industry, I think it's kind of starting to like become a bit more acceptable to like design in sort of more innovative ways, even in the American schools to a certain extent. So
Yes, yes.
Mo is asking, oh, we've got so many questions now. So, okay. I'm sorry, Aaron first is asking, is there a way to make fashion that is, oh, okay. And this is a question I was going to ask you anyway. Is there a way to make fashion that is an art, but also accessible to different income economic classes of people? So that accessibility portion and making and thinking about, I think, also the economic implications of
Right. So, like making a living at it, is that the question?
making a living, but then also I think on the flip side for consumers, you know, making like how do you make something that looks like this that is actually affordable from like a consumer?
Oh, gotcha. Fair enough.
Yeah.
There are ways. Okay. Let's just keep this upcycling conversation going that we started earlier. I have a coat here in my office I could show you, but you can, if you go the upcycle route, let's say, there are so many things you can do with materials that are already in the system that don't cost much. You can find sewers and cutters to support what you're doing, and you could very easily do, you know, the British call it bespoke. You can do your own custom design through upcycling, and it could be very affordable that way. I have designers that I've interviewed that don't charge much on their upcycles, and they're beautiful. To me, they're works of art because you still have to compose it. You know, you're going to deconstruct it maybe, or you're going to take something from this blanket and something from this curtain, or you know, or something from, you know, this garment that, you know, whatever, that's seen better days, and make it totally different, like what Isabella did. So yeah, I think there is a way. You can always find an avenue to make money in the fashion industry and still be creative and still have an artistic hand. Yeah, it doesn't have to be, you know, expensive fabric, um, or expensive construction, you know, as far as a sewer. So yes.
Yeah, and then of course, like find it once you find ways, I think of use like reusing those materials and finding sort of strategies for manipulating them in ways that don't necessarily take a lot of labor, then that
Right.
cost like that cost sort of, you know, it becomes sort of passed down to the consumer and making it more accessible for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, Mo is asking, how do you reconcile the need to focus on conceptual experimentation, but also the growing need to get some of the ideas about sustainable, thoughtful materials into the public?
Okay. Well, a good example are any of these designers that are doing, Isabella is a very good example, that are doing conceptual, but yet it's still sustainable. Lilia Litskoskaya, who's from the Ukraine, well, let's click on her piece.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Um,
Oh yeah, I
she,
love her stuff. Yeah.
she does cultural preservation that truly has an artistic hand. Um, and yet she feels that fashion is eternal. And so she's an example of what she does is she's leveraging an old um, traditional weaving process that's called Doritska. And what it does is it takes discarded garments and fabrics and they shred them. And then they put them in a ball. And then from there, those yarns get woven into new material. What's interesting about this process is that because let's just call it a pot of soup that has all of these discarded materials and fabrics and garments, and they're shredded, and then now they're made yarns again, and then woven. She what she The outcome of that, it's almost like a carpet, because what you get, and this is exactly what you get color, you get texture that you didn't even know about, and you're not dyeing this, it's all woven. She's an example of, here you have an artistic hand, it's an artistic aesthetic, and yet it's sustainable. It's still keeping everything in the ecosystem, including the workers, including the craft that was developed back in the day, centuries ago. So yes, you can you can have an artistic hand along with a sustainable practice. That's I hope I answered the question. I think that's
I think so. Yeah. And I think, I mean, especially, I think this is actually, I'm glad we did actually get to this work, because I think it's such a great example of like what would happen, right? And at the educational level, if we sort of
Mhm.
draw on more of these kinds of traditional practices and we really think about like that thread to body kind of journey, and how we can start to like actually teach out some of these sustainable ways of like sourcing materials, or not necessarily always like working with the uncut cloth
Right,
as a starting point for like what we do,
right,
and because it's a different process. It's a really different process of patterning. It's a different process of like really kind of thinking
yeah,
through a design, to start from things that already exist, as opposed to like a muslin or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, that sort of
Very
traditional process of mocking up something 8,000 times and then
right, right. No, very good point. Yes.
yeah. For sure. Cool. Well, we're starting to approach. If there's any other questions, that please feel free to type them in the chat. But one thing I did want to kind of come to before we sort of have to sign off for the day is one thing that oh, oops.
The unsettling.
Yeah, the unsettling.
Really
Oh, why
uplift.
can't I? Is that an? Let me just find this really quickly. But I really liked this
If you go back to just the edge,
edge.
home, and then it's a front pin. So there it is.
Ah, great, fantastic. So
Made it easy.
I would encourage all of the students to look at this one, but I just really I wanted to just talk about these because you published this at the beginning of this year, and this idea of like uncharted paths for the directions of fashion, and I can't feel like this kind of leads into like what's the future look like, and as potential like students who might be like, and consumers who might be sort of a part of this future, what are some of the things that you see that we need to either do differently, or that you find exciting? So
Yeah, I published this literally on New Year's Day, because I had done, over the pandemic time, I had done a lot of study on what was really going on, with the collapse in the industry like that, who was doing what. And I had gained a lot of statistical knowledge, stores closing, yada, yada, yada. And I felt like it was just a blank slate for the industry to really kind of move in a different direction. I was disappointed, 9 months later that they weren't really moving in a different direction. But I thought, well, I will put my 2 cents based on what I have done, where I've done research, plus my own experience and what I think the future should hold. So that's what this is. And yes, I agree with Allison. I encourage you to read these 10 uncharted paths. They pretty much give the premise of most people. Okay, most people don't. People like or pay attention to what they don't have or cannot get. So think about that. We're so used to reiterations of everything, and it's just there's so much out there, but they're not used to what they can't have or they like or pay attention to what they can't have or can't get. So the first two pieces, the first two uncharted paths are about how you design and the scarce and making it scarce. Scarcity is good. Right now we have excess. So scarcity is good. And today we call them collections, and then many brands make thousands and thousands of units per size of these collections. There's nothing wrong with having limited editions, and there's nothing wrong with being seasonless. We don't have to say that this is for this season and this is for that season. Who cares? Everyone across the globe, we all live in different kinds of seasons and have different kind of weather patterns. So let us decide on what we feel like we need for our bodies, or for a special occasion. So the whole seasonless piece and the design piece, particularly when it comes to scarcity, I think is really important to start thinking along those lines. And that's why when I say upcycling is a really good advantage in doing that. And it's okay to have a business where you just have maybe a couple of dozen clientele people. And let's say I'm one of them. And let's say that I love storytelling. Well, we know that. I love storytelling, and I love meaningful and purposeful design. So I would be okay with 1 or 2 ensembles a year because I like to recycle my closet anyway. But if you had 24 of me or 30 of me, you could make a living at that, and it would be so unique. So the scarcity piece. Now, when I flip, and feel free to read through all of this because it touches on media, what media needs to do. It touches on retail, how to communicate out to consumers and educate them, because they have to be educated about the artistic practice, the sustainable practice. They really want to know, and we just don't tell them. And so I think it's at the onus of the brand and the designer to make that part of the packaging, make that at point of sale when they are purchasing something, they have all this information as to what, how did it get here and why? What is its provenance? I mean, the artists do this, what is the provenance of this painting, So anyway, think like that. And then when you drop down to the bottom of it, the last two, 9 and 10, let's look at 9, circular fashion system. When you click on that, it'll take you to that kind of easy. We went through it before. Yeah, it'll take you there. So you kind of have, you refresh your memory as to what that means. But here's the thing. Anyone that enters the fashion system today, the industry today, if you don't have a plan for a circular fashion system, just don't bother, because we have to get there. So there's enough information as to studies where consumers are getting on board. So we've got to get there. I think it's important for the industry to lead the consumer. And then the last piece, what I want to say about the last piece, which is about diversity, because there's a lot of talk about inclusion today, considering what has gone on in the last 9 to 12 months. And when I was coming up through the ranks, it was difficult for me to get promoted because of the color of my skin. I was born in the civil rights era. I became a buyer with Macy's in the 80s. Okay, so that kind of gives you a little bit of framework. But my generation and older are the ones that are at the top. They're the ones still in charge, making the decisions. They're the CEOs, they're the directors, they're the VPs. And they still carry baggage when it comes to diversity. The younger generations, what I believe that the younger generation, they're born into diversity. They're born into inclusion. So they don't really see what my generation or prior has seen. So I think this is for everybody. Number 10, I'm going to read it out loud. It's for everybody. Diversity in the workplace. It's simple. Eliminate the privilege hierarchical barriers. Every company has them. Close your eyes. Hire and promote people with talent. When you open your eyes, you'll see that you are moving people through your company with diverse backgrounds, and mostly because they have talent. Their skin color or ethnic makeup won't matter. I believe the younger generation is doing it and will be doing that. They're just not at the top that makes those decisions right now. So there you go. There it is.
No, and then I guess, well, and I think that I honestly, I feel like this is such a great list for folks, both like who are currently involved either with the industry or educating folks to be a part of the industry. Certainly for younger designers, like thinking about this as like almost like these sort of pathways or uncharted ideas as things to start. How do we start to incorporate these things into practice and create perhaps a world that certainly is more sustainable, because fashion is one of the worst contributors to unsustainability, but also just one that like reflects kind of everyone and who we want to sort of be. Let's see, I do think Gigi says this is such a great resource. Thank you so much for sharing. Any last just bits of advice that you have for younger designers who are wanting to do this and start to think about how they might start up in this world?
I do. Here's what I would say. It's a fabulous industry. It requires a lot of work, a lot of hours you put into it. It can be very rewarding. And I'd say the first thing to do, the first suggestion I would make is to build a network. Look at your sphere of influence. Look at people that are in your sphere of influence, which is family, friends, your professor. I mean, look at your sphere of influence and start to build a network. Start to say to yourself, I'm going to need someone in marketing and communications to help me. I'm going to need a photographer. And you'll be surprised at how much you can trade, like in the beginning when there's not a lot of money, how you can kind of trade services, because everyone's kind of starting out, but there's a lot of talent out there. I would say start building a network and building relationships.
Thank you. That's great. That is great advice. And I feel like that will help you no matter where you go in life. So absolutely. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for being with us today. This was just such an incredible talk. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording right now.